Welcome to the Deep Dive. So today we're looking at something maybe a bit unexpected. You shared this YouTube transcript, right?
Right.
From Ian Kirk Patty Cake called Negative Impacts of Reading.
Yeah.
And it really, it made us pause, didn't it? Because you always hear reading is just great, universally.
It's definitely a counterintuitive take. And, the presenter calling themselves an author idiot and loin streamer.
Yeah.
That signals right away we're probably getting a, let's say, unique perspective.
Absolutely. So our mission today is really to dig into the arguments presented in this source, explore these potential downsides of reading that maybe we don't think about much.
Right.
It's not about bashing reading, obviously, but getting a fuller picture.
A more nuanced view, yeah.
Exactly. So let's start with this first idea that reading could, in some situations, actually lead to less empathy. How does that work?
Well, what's interesting is the logic behind it. It's not really about reading per se, but more about the kinds of stories we might be consuming a lot of. The argument is if you're constantly reading narratives that simplify people into just heroes or just villains, maybe you start seeing real people that way too, like flattening them into stereotypes instead of seeing the complexity.
That actually makes a lot of sense. It kind of touches on that psychological thing, the availability heuristic, right?
Exactly.
Where stuff you see over and over feels more common or true than it really is. So loads of stereotypical characters, even fictional ones.
Yeah, it can subtly start shaping your kind of unconscious biases about actual group. The transcript mentions how that constant exposure can really bake in a belief, even if you're not actively thinking, oh, I believe this now.
And the presenter connects this to online arguments too.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point they make.
How people just jump to assuming the absolute worst about someone else instead of just asking, like, hey, what did you mean by that?
Right. And the worry is if your reading diet is full of stuff reinforcing negative stereotypes, it might just, amplify that tendency to leap to nasty conclusions.
The examples given really bring this home. Like the frustrations mentioned about people just dismissing all fiction by women, no matter how different the books are.
Yeah, just lumping my dark Vanessa and To Come for Bigfoot together, as the presenter noted about that video title change. It shows a real lack of nuance.
Or the flip side, that idea that men just can't write women characters well.
Right, or seeing the same old tropes again and again in books and TV, the dumb dad, the woman who's just there to be looked at or victimized. The presenter argues these repeated portrayals chip away at empathy for certain groups, leading to these broad, often unfair generalizations.
It really sounds like a warning about confirmation bias, almost.
Definitely. Seeking out stuff that confirms what you already think and ending up with a pretty skewed view of the world.
Like that analogy about reading too much crime news and getting paranoid.
Exactly that. Or the mention of the gift of fear. Useful in some ways, sure, but an overfocus could maybe make you see threats everywhere in normal interactions.
Yeah. So the advice from the presenter, read widely and talk to people, seems pretty crucial then.
Absolutely. Getting different perspectives, interacting with actual humans, it's a counterbalance to potentially narrow views you might absorb from reading alone.
Okay, so that's the empathy angle. Now, the transcript shifts into a much more sensitive topic, a possible link between reading and porn addiction.
Yeah, this was a pretty provocative point. And the key here is this distinction the presenter makes.
Between sex scenes and spicy scenes.
Right.
What's the difference according to them?
So the idea is that sex scenes, even if they're graphic, are there to serve the story. They develop characters, show relationship dynamics, maybe move the plot forward.
Okay.
Like the example from Dead and Drive, where something crucial plot-wise happens during the sex, or think about Bret Easton Ellis. The graphic stuff in The Shards or Glamorama isn't really about arousal. It's about showing ugliness, awkwardness, the messy parts of relationships.
Right. The purpose isn't just titillation, it's narrative and then spicy scene.
Those, according to the presenter, are aimed squarely at reader fantasy, reader gratification, like the Fourth Wing example mentioned, focusing intensely on the physical pleasure.
Oh, okay.
And the presenter observes this trend, right? People seeking out books for the spice, maybe even skipping other parts.
So it's about the intent behind the scene. Is it serving the story or serving a different kind of reader need?
Precisely. And that leads to the concern about motivation. If the main driver becomes chasing that explicit content.
Yeah.
The presenter draws a parallel to the escalation sometimes seen in porn addiction, needing more extreme content for the same effect. And they point to seeing increasingly taboo themes in some romance subgenres, stalker plots, incest, forced proximity, and then that really disturbing example of a book eroticizing a toddler and grooming.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
And that escalation is the core worry, that potential need for more and more extreme material. The presenter is very clear. condemning the eroticization of minors out. They make a sharp distinction between that and, say, writing about difficult topics like abuse or grooming within a narrative context, Lita or Tampa, where the intent is exploration, not reader gratification through exploitation.
That's a critical distinction. Exploring versus exploiting.
Absolutely crucial. It's not anti-sex scenes. It's specifically concerned about the intentional eroticization of harm, especially involving kids.
Okay, let's shift gears again. The next negative impact is pretty unsettling. Unexpected exposure to fetishistic content.
Yeah, this is about that jarring feeling when you pick up a book expecting one thing and you get hit with really graphic, specific, and often disturbing fetish material that wasn't signaled at all.
And the presenter shares a personal story here, right? With a book called Amidala.
A very vivid and, frankly, disturbing one. The author actually reached out to the presenter first, which adds to the feeling of being misled. The erotic world building involved headless bodies posed like Dahmer victims, graphic descriptions like messy cum face, furniture made from bodies, beheading as humiliation, a group orgy with a corpse, and this really bizarre reproductive process with unconscious people and bathing the parent.
That's incredibly graphic and specific.
And the main point here is that feeling of, like, betrayal. Encountering that level of extreme, specific fetish content completely out of the blue when nothing suggested.
Yeah, you feel blindsided.
Completely. It really makes you think about transparency and, content warnings. When stuff is that intense or specific, readers kind of deserve a heads up, right? Especially if it involves potentially triggering.
Definitely. It erodes trust if you feel like you were tricked into reading something deeply disturbing.
Okay, moving on. The transcript talks about hostility in reading groups.
Ah, yeah. I think anyone in a book club or online discussion group might recognize this one.
Totally. That pressure sometimes to, agree with the dominant opinion.
Or feeling like you'll sound stupid if you didn't get it the right way, or if you liked a book everyone else hated.
Exactly. Or vice versa, hating a beloved book. The presenter mentions feeling stupid or problematic, even shares being called stupid for an interpretation. It highlights that tension, right? You want to share your thought, but you risk getting jumped on. Comparing perspectives is great, but when it turns hostile.
Yeah, it just shuts down real discussion. Makes people hesitant, to be honest.
You end up needing groups that really make an effort to be respectful, where it's okay to
Which is, let's be honest, a challenge in many online spaces anyway.
True.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into the next point, hostility from the author.
Okay, so this is when the negativity comes from the creator themselves.
Yeah. The transcript talks about authors reacting badly if a reader's interpretation or maybe a review doesn't match what the author wanted or expected. And as the presenter points out, this can hit harder if the author is well known, right? There's that power dynamic. They even shared their own bad experiences, like authors getting hostile after being asked for a review, which led to feeling alienated and rethinking reviewing altogether.
Wow, that's rough.
It really raises questions about that author-reader relationship. Interpretations will differ, that's natural, but hostility from the author, that can be really discouraging.
Yeah, it feels like feedback should be seen differently, even if it's critical.
Yeah.
Not like a personal attack.
Right. Healthy discussion needs respect from both sides.
Okay, next up, judging morality. This is judging the reader based on the books they like.
Exactly. It's that assumption that if you enjoy a book with, say, an anti-hero or morally ambiguous themes, you must somehow endorse those bad things in real life.
Right, like reading American Psycho means you approve of.
Well,
you know.
Precisely. The presenter talks about readers getting shamed or questioned just for liking books with problematic stuff.
Which often misses the whole point of the book, right?
Yeah, totally. It overlooks nuance. Sometimes the value is in exploring darkness or difficult issues, not celebrating them. And sometimes the presenter notes it's just thinly veiled dislike for the author being projected onto the reader.
And the result is people get scared to even admit what they're reading.
Yeah, this kind of moral gatekeeping just creates fear and silences potentially interesting conversations about complex literature.
Engaging with tough topics in fiction can actually be a way to process.
Yeah.
Judging based on book covers is just simplistic.
Agreed. Okay, the final negative impact discussed is disillusionment.
Disillusionment with reading itself.
Sort of, yeah. It's this idea that books sometimes aren't given the same artistic respect as, say, movies or games or music, things that seem more technologically complex.
It's just words on a page perception.
Exactly. And this can lead to books being seen more as, like, source material, a stepping stone to a screenplay or a game concept.
The presenter mentioned screenwriters writing books just to pitch them as movies.
Yeah, or authors writing in a super cinematic style, almost like a script already. They mention specific examples, like feeling some books read like screen cuts. There's also the effect of self-publishing. While it's great for access, the sheer volume means, well, the presenter suggests it can sometimes feel like gig work, maybe leading to a lot of lower effort stuff out there.
And that can dilute the perceived value of the whole medium.
That seems to be the concern. It can lead to feeling disillusioned, like the presenter felt about live-action remakes losing animation's magic, or just encountering too many copy-paste books.
So it's about wanting books to be valued as books for their own unique strength.
I think so. Appreciating the art of written storytelling for what it is, not just as potential fodder for other media. When that gets lost, yeah, disillusionment.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered quite a bit here.
We have, from empathy potentially decreasing to addiction concerns, unsettling fetish exposure, hostility in communities, and from authors, moral judgments, and even the sense of disillusionment with the medium. It's a lot to think about. And again, the point isn't stop reading.
No, definitely not. It's about being more critical, more aware of how we engage with what we read and the potential effects, both good and bad.
Yeah, a more nuanced understanding.
Yeah.
And the presenter's call to action really is for listeners to think about their own experiences.
Exactly. Consider how reading impacts you, share your thoughts, move past that simple reading good equation, and reflect a bit more deeply.
So that leaves us with a final thought for everyone listening. Considering all these potential downsides we've talked through,
Yeah.
how do you think we can cultivate a truly healthy, enriching relationship with reading in today's world? With all its complexities and media pressures, what conscious choices help maximize the good stuff and, maybe minimize some of these potential risks?